here we are, and welcome to a successive episode of the Friday Night Movie Podcast. And I say that with a question because that's probably a dumb name for this, but this is the long-awaited Succession finale. This is a Shai and Lily duo episode because Becky only watches one episode of Succession a year. Yeah, it's too much for her. So we miss Becky. Becky, we miss you this episode, but
it's only fair because she hosted last week.
Yeah, and
you weren't here.
Sometimes you got to mix it up, you know. We gotta give people different flavors.
And there was a whole chunk of time where I missed because you guys were at South by. So
right, exactly. So this is good. It's a little catch up. This is like our 1984 episode.
Exactly, which I've gotten a lot of good feedback on. People really like that episode.
The editorial decisions on what episodes come on this show and what order are just out of control.
Out of control.
But let's talk about.
Yeah.
You know, what's interesting is when I talk about Succession with people is in some ways I want to talk about, let's talk, here are the best siblings in the world talking about the worst siblings in the world. But as we have said before,
that's great.
The dirty secret of Friday Night Movie is that, and I'll say this all the way through the finale, are there viewers of this show that sympathize more with the siblings than the two of us? Than the two of us?
Yeah.
Because I don't think
so. I haven't found siblings. Them. I haven't found
most
them.
People think I'm a monster, but I see and I know we are not like these people in so many ways. But when I see siblings struggling with relationships and generational
there's a lot of shows about siblings who struggle, and like that show Parenthood is all about siblings, and there was that show Brothers and Sisters. Like it's not an original concept, but there is something about these, and I cannot relate to them.
There's three of them, I guess. Maybe that's it.
Well,
I mean, there's four, but there's
of them. But yeah, there's three core siblings, and I can't relate to them whatsoever. But I think there's something that is so well done on the show that they have the potential to be as close as we are, let's say,
right.
Or they.
And
I
you
think
see, and you know what? I think I feel
me
that.
In. I feel that, right, and it's the like nervousness that I have watching them like it's the dark side of like what could happen to siblings that could be so close because no one else can understand their world but them.
And that's something I think the three of us have in common. With them. Like,
no one
there's this.
No
one,
family
people
like
get
you.
It. We made hours of a podcast. It's basically as good as Succession.
Exactly.
So people kind of understand us.
But it's like sort of like watching, a car accident or something that like I can't look away because, this could happen to anyone in a way. Like, oh my, what happened? How did this happen that they can't be to each other?
Here's my big thing. I'm going to start with this question. And I'll start with my answer too. What was this show about? Because for me, this show was not about money, not about greed, business. Not about business. No. It was about kids trying to live up to whatever they imagined they needed to live up to not necessarily continue their father's legacy, but to achieve at a certain level. Because getting rich, they would have been rich multiple times this season, especially they would have.
This season they could have nodded their heads and become multi-billionaires.
And they ended being really rich too. They made the deal.
Right. And that's, it's not about the money. This show, people think this show is about wealthy people, like the 1%, selfishness and disgustingness. Sure, that's part of it, but that's not what the show is about.
No, the show is about to me, and I will come back to it over and over and over again. The most haunting scene in the whole show to me is when he says, "I love you, but you're not serious people." It is about all four of them, but the main three trying to become serious people and not being capable of doing it.
And I think that this is something that many communities, many cultures, many families can relate to. That has nothing to do with money. Living up to your parents, your father's legacy, expectations, impossible. But also in this show, it's impossible expectations.
Well, because he's never going to be right. That's part of it.
He is a terrible person. And what's great about killing, and the spoiler alert, killing him off in episode 3, is that we're stewing in that legacy.
Yeah.
We get to along with them have selective memory for the rest of the season of only the good parts of Logan Roy, because he's not there berating anyone anymore.
Right.
And how torturing that is, because, of what a terrible father he was. But they often choose to remember only the good things about him.
And how they miss what he was able to
push them to.
What he was able to, also just the decisions he was able to make. He bailed them out so many times. Think about bailing out Kendall from the accident where he murdered the kid, right?
Well, except that he didn't really murder him, and he used it against Kendall to keep him under his thumb.
That's true. He made him think.
But Kendall would have probably fallen apart had no one come in and kind of dealt with his shit.
Yeah, and one of the other reasons why I love that they killed Logan is, okay, this is my analogy. In so many shows that are about relationships, a will they, won't they? The will they, won't they is so powerful that when they ever put the characters together, they have to break them up again. And you never really get to see them navigating a relationship. Whereas a show like Parks and Rec got Ben Wyatt and Leslie Knope together, and then you got to see the humor and the joy of them having that relationship for many years, and it was amazing.
Right.
Monica and Chandler is another example of you've got to see the relationship happen and play out and become its own funny thing. There was always the specter of what happens when Logan dies, because that's where the show starts, right?
It's about who's going to succeed him.
And now we actually got to really sit in it for many, many episodes that I think was some of the best acting and writing I've ever seen on television ever, period.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know if you agree, but to me, this is one of my favorite episodes, was the finale.
The finale was really probably my least favorite episode of the season because I felt it was very long.
Sure. I felt it was long, but I enjoyed it. Maybe it was too long for the not a lot of stuff that happens in it. It's like there's not that much that happens in it, and it was too long for that. But I reveled in the padding of that episode because this was the last time I was going to get to see them.
Yeah,
and I thought that I really thought that Roman stole the show. I'm just going to MVP right now.
Oh wow,
on that finale, I think that Roman, to me, it just blew me away. And that, I mean, of course.
Well, if we're doing this now, I gotta go with Kendall.
Really,
because his desperation, his failure. I mean, Jeremy Strong, that's a performance of a lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, he's phenomenal. But
and that's not because I'm rooting for Kendall. It's because
no.
I think that
and I'm not rooting for Roman. I
think that performance. I mean, whatever. All three of them are just amazing. But I think
if I'm rooting for anyone, I think I'm rooting for Shiv.
No, because okay,
maybe.
All right, let's get into it then.
Okay,
who are you rooting for?
I think there was a part of me that was rooting for Shiv because I think there's a part of me. I mean, I didn't like the part, of course, where she's going behind their backs, but they also went behind her backs. I love that. If one of us backstabbed each other, it would be so catastrophic that I think that could really be a big deal. They backstab each other all the time and then are like, oh my God, we're best friends. So
which is why, by the way,
dynamic is bizarre, but they are very, very close.
Yeah. So for me, I think that, it's hard to say. I mean,
okay, when she gets screwed by Madsen, they don't punish her for going behind their backs.
Right. They welcome her back in, right?
They welcome her back into the fold. They need her, but they also don't, because they assume she'll vote no. And but they don't, they become a team again. Whatever happens in the end happens in the end, but their attitude of stabbing each other in the back is not the same as other people. It's part of how they were raised. And it doesn't have anything to do with how they love each other, which is really interesting.
They're all equal to me, I guess, when I think about it, because I mean, I do not think Shiv or Rome could have run that company.
No, I don't.
I think
I think
Kendall
Kendall.
could have run that
Yeah,
company with the
agreed.
two of them. He
I
may not have
agree.
been as successful because he's impulsive and he does stupid things, but they would have lived and died by that. But I don't think I think Shiv repeatedly showed that she can't
She can't
navigate the
Yeah.
business.
No, and she wasn't going to. There was some part of me that like was happy to see her go after it for herself or do something for herself, because she always was kind of, going along and trying to make her dad happy. I don't know. There was something about her storyline. I knew it wasn't going to end well. That I was, I enjoyed that, her and Matt's, that whole thing. And yeah, I thought that was so well done. I think it's really important for the show that they don't end up this like Brady Bunch, let's go run peers and start our own company and like be BFFs and like go into business together. That I like how that, like it couldn't have gone that way. It wouldn't have been true to the show. But I do think the way it ended was, I'll follow your notes. I'll let you host, but yeah, I do think the way it ended was, I do think the end of the way it ended was brilliant.
Okay, so let's talk about the episode. Yeah. All right. So there's a final fight. This is all spoilers now. There's a final fight at the last minute before they're about to vote. Shiv turns on Kendall. And on a certain logical level, like Kendall was also not going to be successful, but she says some terrible, mean things. She has the strangest reasons. It almost looks like jealousy to me. She votes against.
My theory. Okay.
Well, let's go. She votes against. They lose the company, and they all go separately to different depressing, alone ends. But
except Rome, not Rome.
Well, he just goes to the bar.
But he's smiling. He's free.
Well, okay. Oh, that's an interesting. Okay, so
he smiles.
So this is my big question. I think we see who each of them really are. Each of the main characters, who they really are in that last episode. In that last episode, particularly in the final fight, the final few minutes. So, what do you see in Rome?
So, I see in Rome that he cracks. Like his father, like starting at the funeral episode, he's fully breaking down and he retreats to his mommy. Like he goes to his mom's house. He's in pajamas. You never see him dressed like that. He's not okay. And his mom says he's not okay.
And I was taught, was it you who told me that I was looking at that polo and I was like, oh, I bet that polo is thousands of dollars. And it was like a Target polo or something that he was wearing.
Oh, it wasn't me, but I do follow that extensively.
But it was something like that. That the polo he was wearing in that scene
was not expensive.
Was not expensive.
And it's on purpose, because the sunglasses, the notebooks, the purses, the socks, everything in that show is extremely calculated. And even if you'll never see it, right? And so the clothing that he's wearing in that episode is extremely important for the character. And yeah, I think he's done. He's like, that's so interesting. I think it breaks him. And he's just like, can't you guys see that I'm having a crisis and all you care about is my vote? And he's like fully in crisis. And the jokes that he makes and the things that he says, to me, the scene at the mom's house, those few scenes at the mom's house are the best of the show. Because it's what I
want to gag from that thing they made him drink. They make Kendall drink. Like it grosses me out so much.
And I believe it's the last scene that they filmed. That was the last scene that they filmed, because then Shiv and Rome shaved Kendall's head.
Yeah.
And so like to me, that's because that's sort of like in the love story movie or whatever that you're gonna watch, what could have been.
Yeah.
And it stays in it. Like it was so joyful for me to watch, and it's so depressing and tragic that's never what they're gonna get.
Reminds me at the end of The Godfather Part 2. After the movie, they show that meal scene.
Yes.
And actually the father's not in the scene, and because they couldn't get Brandon back, but they just sort of have him as a ghost in a way.
Right.
It does kind of remind me.
It's like what could have been. And
so your spin on Rome is really interesting to me, because I view him as this coward, this guy who never really had the guts to give himself over to the work. But your impression of him being relieved is that is great too.
I think, yeah, because I think what broke him is the funeral. What broke him is his mistake with Mencken. Those things just broke him, and he sides with his brother because he has no other choice. Like, he needs to stay in the fold. Like, he's like numb. But
I mean,
when
does he need to be dominated? Is that part of who his character is also?
could be, yeah, he needs to be put into submission, because that's like a lot of what his psychology is about.
Right.
And he tries the tough guy role at the beginning of the season. I'm not warning my dad and all that. And then the whole facade comes down. And I love that they show him with a smirk on his face, a smile. I think he's relieved and he's free of the, like, it's basically been a torture for him, even though he sided with his brother. And I think, like, the thing that you now worry about is Kendall can't function. Like, Kendall, I want to believe Kendall then, with his gajillions, buys Pierce on his own. Like, he will keep going, but you're also worried Kendall will kill himself, because you always have that fear with Kendall
from that
episode. Strong enough.
That episode where he
says to Shiv, "I will not make it. You don't give this to me, I will die." So he's telling you what your worst fear is for him.
And he reveals that his purpose in life was to do this, was to be the...
Right. He doesn't have another purpose. Now, I think it's brilliant that you have Logan's guy walking behind him, because Kendall will always have someone taking care of him.
Well, that ending
won't let him.
You know what? I'm really getting into this Godfather thing. That ending felt very Godfather. It reminded me of the final shot of The Godfather Part 3.
Interesting.
When Pacino is sitting alone, sad, everyone's lost everything.
Right.
He's still rich, but he's lost everything.
It's not about the money.
But I have this theory that, like, is that guy following to protect him because he told him he'd take care of him?
Yes, that guy's...
Or is
his loyal...
that guy going to off him?
No. That guy is now... Kendall needs a babysitter.
And that guy will be...
That guy's
transferred to him.
It's transferred to him, his loyalty to Logan. Yeah, that's it. He's with him. That guy needed a purpose too. He was lost.
Oh.
His bodyguard. Okay, but now here I'm coming to Shiv. Okay. Hot take. Shiv does what she does. None of her excuses make sense.
They are a little bit crazy.
And they're crazy because she does it to save her family. She chooses the family. He becomes CEO. They are destroyed, the three of them, forever.
Right, because they'll be able to be around each other again. If Kendall doesn't die,
there's some possibility of them being maybe even able to work together again. But what she saw at that meeting, the glimmer, what she saw was he will be, and not only will he be insufferable, but they will never be able to have a relationship if he gets to become king. And I want to believe that she lost her dad. She doesn't have a husband. She lost her dad. She's about to have a baby. She has this crisis of, I need my people, and I'm selfishly going to keep them by not letting him ascend to the throne. That's my theory.
That's great. I think that's better than what I think.
Because her excuses don't make sense.
See, for me, it was a little bit as she always wanted to be respected, valued. In the end, she couldn't let someone else do it. I think that was part of it. But I also think
had she sat there and just voted against him with confidence and with smirk on her face, I would say yes. But she has like a breakdown too.
That's true.
She has a nervous breakdown in the office.
And nothing she said about what would happen to the company was wrong, right? Like, he couldn't do it. And she's not trying
to save the company. She's trying to save their family, I think.
Okay. I think that's a very cool. Okay. That's cool. I like that. All right.
She has no reason to vote yes for the deal. No reason. They literally hand it to you on a platter. She hates Tom and Madsen and all of them. Like, she has no reason except that she wants out and she wants them out. Right.
But weirdly, she stays in her relationship with Tom, which we'll come to in a moment. But now let's talk about Tom, who I don't know if I specifically predicted Tom, but I did predict that Siobhan would not, when they said an American CEO, they were going to install.
Tom is a great like left turn there. I didn't predict that. That was perfectly done.
I was, to me, it made perfect sense. He's the
It's
exact
fantastic.
kind of, that scene with
CEO.
him and Lucas
Mattson?
talking about how Mattson just wants him to, just wants an attack
A
dog.
yes man.
And that's all he wants. I mean, he's always been willing to do whatever the person who will give him the most power and money will give him.
What do you think about him keeping Greg on?
I think it was made total sense. Because he wants someone to own. He wants.
Now Greg owes him.
Yeah,
and he can't trust him.
But it doesn't matter. He never trusted him. He wants the leverage. Tom is still a very strategic character, right? Tom's
don't quote me on this, even though it's recorded. But I love him.
Oh, you see, I think he's like such a piece of garbage. I mean,
but the actor's so good.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. Like he is just, when you hear him talking in interviews and he's just like this quiet British man and he's so nice. And like, I'm just like, how is this
The actor's a genius. I think the character is brilliantly written. But I have a thing about, other than Rava Roy, who I respect, I hate the other spouses. I think they're all like he's like the most extreme. Now, he is also, as much as he's two-faced, he's always been 100% clear about what he wants. He loves Shiv.
Yeah.
He wants to be rich. He wants to be in this fancy world and make his way to the top and get the most power that he can get. And I think Greg getting owned is exactly what would happen in that case. Yeah, what exactly happened. I'm glad it wasn't like a Game of Thrones ending and they're like, surprise, Greg is now in charge. Greg's an idiot.
Well, what I loved about the show is that, about Game of Thrones for a second, I couldn't watch the finale for like 2 weeks after. And I started avoiding social media and I was like, oh no. And then I was like, oh wait, there is no like Bram is whatever king.
Yeah.
Like there was no spoiler in the sense of like, okay, I guess I could have read, Waystar sold or whatever, but no one was putting posts out about that. Like I appreciate that there wasn't like one final spoiler that,
the world actually continued in a way that made sense as opposed to wrapping up.
Like Game of Thrones, which was terrible.
Frank and Carl.
They get the axe.
I don't think but they also, you see the conversation where they're like, let's go around for one more ride or whatever.
Right, but they're going to get fired, which is amazing.
But also they love just being in there and making the money and having the power.
A golden parachute, and then they just want to keep going. But Jerry's out, right? Jerry
disappears. And so one thing I really loved about this episode was...
that's what I'm surprised about.
I'm not surprised because...
Slinks out in the darkness.
I'm pleased that they did not try to focus on every single character. Once Jerry moved out of the world of Rome's world and she was going to be fired, they really moved her character to the side in a way because she wasn't going... I mean, I guess they made the decision she wasn't going to really affect much.
She was written as a man. Jerry's written as a man, and then she auditioned, or I don't know, they found her, however it was, and they just kept the name Jerry, and they were like, she's amazing. And then they kind of tweaked the character.
But I think like it would have been crazy fan service in the wrong way.
To like have her in Rome drive off in a car together.
Yeah, or to have her have some big moment, because story-wise, like her story kind of ended. She's out from a power standpoint. And that's what happens in those situations.
Carolina, that like last like knife to Hugo, like Carolina out of nowhere. That's a great, like, bringing a character back who's always been on the periphery.
Although her name is in the credits, by the way.
Yeah. I
mean, it's interesting.
Deal.
I know, but that's a good deal she negotiated.
Yeah.
You have that much.
I like that, like, at the last minute when everybody's scrambling, Carolina, you've kind of seen, kind of make her way through this whole thing unscathed. There's nothing too bad you could say about her.
No, this was her time. But Hugo... she couldn't trust Hugo, and then he was technically her boss.
No, I think they're like counter, right?
Either way,
like, I think they're like
now she gets the whole her whole piece of what she wants.
Mm-hmm.
Connor, who was always the one, if there's one sibling I truly feel bad for, it's Connor, because while he is incompetent,
Wasteful,
incompetent, all those
selfish.
things, he generally just always wants to include his siblings and do stuff together and be a family. And he like Pop, and he talks about Pop, like,
Right.
and they just pretend he doesn't
He's
exist.
sad. He's a very sad character.
Even in the end, when Kendall says, I'm the oldest boy, which is, people are going to be talking about forever. And as an oldest boy, I was like, ooh.
But he's
I
not
was
the
like,
oldest boy.
right,
That was
he's not.
that was such a like a sad line on. Oh my god, that part was so like cringeworthy. It's so hard to watch. I think I could rewatch that scene.
But that scene is why Kendall is my MVP, because like when he lays bare his desperation,
begging,
is
yeah.
so amazing. Okay,
but
now
yeah, and like, but wait, the Willa. Like
Willa
Connor
not going. I mean,
I'm just gonna stay here.
So
In 8
pathetic.
months, I have to read a play, so I'll just stay here.
Yeah.
And then he might not go, and she's like looks so disappointed.
Yeah, which is so obvious, because Willa is probably the person, like in terms of like in that real world, the one I hate the most.
Yeah, I mean, she's it's pretty despicable. That whole thing is like super sad.
It's so sad and creepy. All right, so let's talk about what happens next in your mind. Okay, so I'm going to start. So in your mind, so in my mind, Tom gets fired within a year. By the way, there's no Tom is the king, anything like that. There's no like, oh, Tom really, no way. Tom is
or he just has a life where he has to do like terrible, sketchy things over and over again for Madsen, who's clearly like a criminal.
But Tom
numbers and.
But Tom is exactly the guy who does all these things and then gets fired, right? Like there's no scenario.
Or the show is saying these are the kind of people who stay on top in our world.
No, because Tom, while he's strategic, he is reliant on other people's power always. And at a certain point, Madsen will drop him.
Yeah, but I bet you
he's the
Tom
perfect
gets
fall
dropped.
Guy.
He's a perfect fall guy, but I bet. Yeah, I guess he was willing to go to jail. So you think he'll end in disgrace, not in any sort of like go get a.
Yeah, I think he's just going to be. He's exactly what Madsen uses him. Like there's no happy ending for Tom either. He's gonna be rich, but he'll get fired soon enough. Okay. I think Kendall does fall off the wagon, and I think he eventually dies, unless his siblings take him back somehow. I thought it was going to end with his suicide, but
I'm so glad it didn't. Though.
That would have been maybe over the top. I think Rome, and this is where I do agree with you, I think Rome goes back to his sort of more like quote unquote degenerate behavior.
Yeah.
All of his vices and things.
But I think he'll be happier than he's been in a decade.
Yeah. I think Shaban
is finally free, and maybe we'll do something good with his money.
Yeah, like I think Shaban will go live miserably with Tom.
Why does Shaban go back with Tom?
Because she wanted her dad's approval. She wanted that safety. I think your point about her trying to save, right? She doesn't really have anywhere else to go, because she's compromised all those quote unquote ideals that she had, right? All the ideals she had of being this left-wing politician, like no way.
Oh, that's out the window. I like that they don't tell you who becomes president either in their world.
Oh, I don't remember. Yeah.
No, because you're waiting for the fires and the Wisconsin, and it's not 100% sure who will be president yet. I like that we don't know.
So what do you think happens?
I think in my like very, too altruistic, positive, want everything to work out right. I want to believe that they eventually come back to each other and go through with the Pierce deal, which now they can, and.
I mean, they would have made a mess out of that, though.
They would, but like it was their mess to make. They bought it and they can go make a mess. Oh, okay. And I want to believe that they go and they regroup. I want to believe that they regroup, and without this succession legacy hanging over them and the pressure that maybe even if they fail together. Yeah, but I think that's in like a long time from now. I think she's going to have her baby. And I obviously Shiv and Tom don't end up together. Clearly. Like that's not gonna.
Or it's just back and forth horrific treatment of each other for the rest of their lives. I just a shout out to my favorite side character is definitely Jess, played by Juliana Canfield, who is in The Calling.
The Calling, yes.
She's amazing in The Calling.
Detective.
And her story ended a little earlier, but I'm glad everybody caught on to what I caught on to, which is her reactions were one of the best parts of the show and this season.
And I like when in the final episode he just says, "Come on, new Jess." He doesn't, that like quick little line of like he doesn't bother to learn someone's name. It's like new Jess. I like that.
What if the vote had passed? They just would have made a mess, right? And they would just constantly be still fighting for control.
Yeah, it would have been, I think that would ultimately destroy their relationship. I think now their relationship has a chance of surviving, it would have been a disaster. And Rome would have probably like had a serious breakdown. I don't think Rome could handle being near that company. Kendall would have failed. Kendall may have had a higher chance of harming himself becoming CEO than not, because if he's CEO and fails miserably, then it's going to be a disaster. And I wonder, ultimately, Logan would have rather sold than give it to one of his kids. And that's
because I think he didn't think, right? That was his last move. He didn't think that any of them could have it.
And he didn't want them to ruin it. He just wanted to get rid of it and make them gajillionaires. And ultimately, he got what he wanted. So I loved it. I loved it. The show is brilliant.
Let's say there was a scenario whereby they were really rich and they just went and did normal things. Like they did charity,
No, they can't.
Warren worked at a Starbucks.
No, they can't do that. They either have to be they have to be in some sort of power play. They can't be, they're not normal people.
Because it's not about the being rich. It's about
and it's not about philanthropy. And it's not about doing good. They can't
Mackenzie Scott the situation.
No, exactly. Oops, I got this horrible thing happened to me after this amazing thing happened to me. Now I can do good with my purpose on this planet after the shit card, that I was dealt in my personal life. And I'm going to make good
dedicate myself. Right. Because even Siobhan could have done that. She could have divorced her shitty husband, raised her kid, and
become like an incredible philanthropist. But that's not what they're not in some kind of power play to prove themselves. They're not worth anything. And if you're like, I wonder what would happen when Logan died and if they would still feel that way. Well, guess what? That's what happened. And they still feel this way. So.
Because of our last episode, I cannot stop thinking about omelet nipples.
Omelet nipples. That's one of the best lines in the history of the show. When Roman says, "I'll let you get back to my dad and his omelet nipples to Carrie."
All right, Lil. So your we did MVPs already. I think this is great.
To me, it's Rome, and I think that Willa probably is the LVP. I was a bit
she's always my LVP.
Yeah, but this episode particularly, where I was she had one chance to kind of maybe show us, I'm going to put on a good face for Khan, and
right. And how hard is her life that she could go?
Right, he's going to go to Europe, and I'll stay here because I have a play to read in 8 months. That was brilliant, and I was like, wow, boom.
Yeah, because she's not right. It's not like she's some also ambitious do-gooder who she's trading her soul for money, but actually talented and gonna she's terrible.
She's terrible, and I like that. Yeah, that they really confirm that for
most improved.
I don't know. Maybe Shiv to me, because I think that she came a long way by being able to vote against her brothers, and I want to believe she did it for the right reason.
Okay,
it was not in her best interest. You know what I mean? I wasn't in her best interest because she did it, but I just feel I want to believe that decision was somewhat surprising to everyone because she's somewhere in there. She has changed or improved from the beginning. I want to believe that. I don't know.
Okay. All right. That's cool. I don't know if is there someone who truly improved?
Jess, because she quits.
I mean, Jess, I loved her the whole time. She definitely grew as they kept dropping in those little moments. I would say, who is there someone I enjoyed watching? I mean, I would say I progressively enjoyed watching Matsson more and more.
He's one of the better actors of our generation. Skarsgård, he is so good. It's a joy to watch him act.
He started
so well
he started at 11 out of 10 and he ends at 20 out of 10, right? Like
Right.
that's the only way I can say improved is that
I'm
he's
so glad
good.
they cast him. He's so good.
So perfectly cast. All the little fidgets and impatient movements, all those little movements are so amazing.
Him
well, also his how much he sounds like his dad is unnerving. It's wild.
It's wild. And when he talks in Swedish, is it Swedish?
I guess so. I assume so.
He's a Swede, right? Yeah, he's from Sweden.
Yeah, all those guys are Swedes.
Right. I don't know if they're talking German. I don't know. I don't speak those
languages. No, I think it's Swedish.
Right. Like when he goes between the languages and he's just his clothes. He's just so amazing. So amazing. Love him.
So cool. All right. So thus ends our Succession. Lil, is there anything you've been watching or anything you want to shout out to? I have not, for once, I have not been watching much, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, not for once, because often when I get busy, I just don't have time for TV, but I started Never Have I Ever. That was fun.
I've been reading articles about this season, which is kind of a stupid idea. I don't know exactly what has happened.
If you read articles, you're not going to want to watch it. So
the articles are very negative about this season.
I would say the word comes to mind is trite. It's like really, I'm glad it's ending because there's really not much more for like room for it to go. So it's very much on repeat. It's the same kind of storylines over and over again. There's too many characters in that show, and I've been on repeat.
I got back to watching.
I'm still gonna watch it. It's still cute.
I got back to watching Picard, and I'm on season 3.
Everybody's turned off the podcast now.
Right, I was gonna say no one wants to hear what I have to say about that, so I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm enjoying it though, and I also have been watching The Golden Girls with my younger daughter in particular, but both of my daughters.
That show so much.
And we just flipped it on randomly once, and I think they've watched 25, 30 episodes of the show.
I'm so proud of them.
And
it's a great show.
The comic timing of those women, like every time B. Arthur drops one of her sarcastic comments to Betty White, it's brilliant. It's mastery.
Why, like an 8-year-old Lily after school wanted to watch only that? I can't explain it to you.
And what's interesting,
it was my joy every day after school.
And the analogy I can make, by the way,
reruns.
Yeah, those are definitely reruns. After school is reruns. It was still on when we were kids, though. Like it was.
But it must have been a nighttime show for.
Yeah, it was a nighttime show. I watched the nighttime episodes. What's interesting is that the only analogy I could think of is Grace and Frankie, and Grace and Frankie is similar in that there are innuendo jokes on the Golden Girls that in Grace and Frankie were explicit.
Or just jokes, yeah.
Yeah, because they're 2 different platforms, 2 different eras. And Golden Girls deals with a lot of serious issues about aging, about sexuality, or sexual wellness in a lot of ways. Like they treat these women in
what were they in there? Were they supposed to be in their 60s?
I think Blanche is in her 50s at this point. She's the youngest, and I think she's in her 50s, which is wild, right? Because supposedly they're
like Sex in the City, they're in their 50s.
Right, exactly. They're the same age as the women in Sex in the City.
Girls.
But you know what? It holds up. There's some jokes that are 80s that don't work anymore, but in general, it really, really holds up. And also now now my porch in my house is called the lanai.
Aww.
That's what I'm going to call it from now on.
Lanai. Very Florida thing to say.
Lily, where can people follow you?
At FNM Sisters. And get ready, guys. Pay attention for some content because Becky's in Tenerife for the next 4 weeks. So
you're saying Becky's going to be making content?
No, I'm saying that I will make content with us.
I'm pretty sure Becky doesn't know how to log into Instagram.
Yeah. No. But I'll force her to make content.
And you can follow me at Pancake and the number 4 table. All the Friday Night Movie shenanigans at Friday Night Movie or FridayNightMovie.com. Our theme music is by What Does It Eat? Thank you, Lil. Love you.
Thank you. Love you. Unlike the Roys.
Thank you for listening to Friday Night Movie, the sibling rivalry and pop culture podcast. Join the Friday Night Movie family by following @FriNightMovie on all of the socials and visiting our website, FriNightMovie.com. Our theme song is by What Does It Eat? And make sure to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.